Welcome to the couch. Um, yeah, for those watching on the YouTube stream or the YouTube part of the podcast, we're in a different location. Got some family staying over with me, my mother. So she's taking up the guest room slash office, and we're recording this post game recap show from the living room on the couch. And we just saw Purdue lose 41-13 to the number 3 Michigan Wolverines. And yep, that's what we expected. We expected a Michigan blowout, but they didn't cover. 32 and a half, I think, was the line that I gave you, and it ended up being 28, if my math is correct on that one. So Purdue falls to 2-7, still only one win in Big Ten play. And I still think that there is hope that this team gets to 4, maybe 5 wins, because that was hmm, that was probably not the best showing offensively, and I don't really blame them. When you're shuffling the offensive line that much, it it's not a great look. I mean, there was a graphic that was shown during the broadcast of, like, man, like, what are you supposed to do? Because there was no way that this line was going to hold up against that defensive front. And I can't remember if I was listening to the TV broadcast or the radio broadcast while driving home to catch the start of the game. But it was like no Michigan lineman had played more than 35 snaps a game. Like, they were fresh. They look like the team that was coming off the bye, something that you wished Purdue was last week against Nebraska. They just didn't look like the same team. But it was a team that really struggled to move the ball consistently unless they had some help, which Michigan gave them help plenty of times and gave them shorter fields to work with. But we'll get into the meat of it. Some things that I did see as positives that we can take going forward. But first, this show, as always, is brought to you by Bet Online. The last of the major pro sports league is off and rolling. College basketball is ready to go as well on Monday for those Boiler fans that are watching right now. Bet Online remains your top spot for all your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NFL are in full swing. Yes, the college football, not just in full swing, almost over the regular season. Can't believe it. Gone by way too fast. And BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions. All the hoops, betting action, along with every sport available at your fingertips with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today. Remember to use the promo code BELIEVE, BLAAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts. This game started, and it looked like it was going to be a shutout, looked like it was going to be a runaway game. And I give credit to Purdue. They showed up in that second and third quarter, really played well. Probably some of the best defensive football they played in those couple of quarters. Um, that was a positive. And we're going to try to stick with a lot of the positives. There's obviously, when it's a 28-point loss, there's not a ton of positives, but you got to read between the lines. You got to try and find these good areas, these good spots, these good positions, these guys that are playing well for this team, and put some praise on them, because there's not a whole lot of other positive things that have been said about these guys. And I've been critical of players, sure, and I can't help but think that it's hard to get up for games. Um, it's hard to try to be motivated in games like this, especially when you go down 17-0, and this team still fought back and put up a decent fight, especially on the defensive side. The offense, there's nothing that I think that we can really ultimately take away, because the offensive line was just shuffled around and guys playing out of position and Gus Hartwig playing tackle at at one point, and it was a mess. It was a mess. But I think you put yourself in position, and I think you got to remain positive that you can win 3 games, the final 3 games, because if you look at what Minnesota did today, if you look at what Northwestern did today, and what you look at Indiana, yes, they beat Wisconsin, but only put up 20 points. And you got to think that you're going to put up a better showing offensively than what you have been. Uh, maybe not, with what your offense has looked like here recently. So before we get too deep into the show, make sure you are subscribed. Make sure you are following the show. Um, we're still going to be here throughout the rest of the regular season. And whether it's here down on the couch or here in the house in a different location, still going to try to give you the podcast each and every week, preview and recap show, and try to still mix it up every once in a while with this show, because you guys have been very supportive and I appreciate it, to those that have stuck around through this season. Because as it stands right now, Purdue is the worst team in the Big Ten. Now you can change that. You can change that going forward by winning these last 3 games. Prove that you're not this team, and that is just going to be a 2-win team. Continue to fight. It's and that's the thing that I think is going to be the biggest takeaway from this season. Outside of, you got some solid building blocks on that defensive side, and if you can come back healthy for next year, this could be a solid defense. Solid, not not anything spectacular, but you make those improvements that I think we talked about at the beginning of the year, and you should be in a better spot. Hopefully, things change offensively, whether that is hiring a new offensive coordinator, like I think they should, or you know, getting guys that have been out and in and out of the lineup. You know, bringing back a Max Clare, having a Jamal Erdine, a Yassine. I mean, goodness, and a healthy offensive line. Because this offensive line hasn't been healthy all season long, and that definitely plays into it. I mean, we started off the beginning of the year with no Gus Hartwig for the first 3 games. Tackles get hurt midway through the year, and you're just playing guys that are either inexperienced or just not as talented as the guys that they were in backing up. And in some cases, you're on your third string, tackle, your third string center, and in some cases. So it's it's a struggle to watch this team, put up a fight but still just be outmatched. I mean, it's in a similar case to the Ohio State game where Michigan's just got a whole lot more talent, a lot more speed, because Roman Wilson, he's a game changer, out wide for Michigan. Outside of that, they still have Loveland, who made some catches tonight, and the running backs never really got going. That's my biggest takeaway, and I think I've talked about at least a handful of times. We come back after some of these games where they're shutting down the running game. You hold their 2 running backs below 3 yards per carry, Edwards and Corum, Yeah, I know they still had touchdown runs, but those were inside the 5. I know they gave up the long touchdown run on the jet sweep. That's one big run play that they had. Other than that, they didn't really run the ball super well. Scorton just on that play, I watched the replay back. He went inside and where he should have, been. He's the last man on the defensive line, so he needs to be up the field more to bend that back towards where other defenders are, and he gets sucked inside. I think he's not playing the jet sweep. Either he didn't see it coming, or he was just full full board on stopping the run up the middle because he bolted immediately inside, and that allowed Lewis, I think the running back was, or the wide receiver that caught the pass and just kept on going untouched all the way into the end zone. But you still had Scorton and Jenkins just absolutely playing like monsters. Scorton had another big night, two tackles for loss, I think a couple of sacks, and I thought the defensive front played well. They got after JJ McCarthy a couple of times, still didn't get him uncomfortable. He was still able to throw get into his throws and throw the ball convincingly in rhythm. And on the opposite side, that's the complete 180 from what we saw from Hudson Card. And I get it. The offensive line is banged up. You are being pressured as soon as you snap the ball. He only has time for one read, and he's got to think about either moving out of the pocket or taking off and running. And we saw him take off and do a few runs, um, a couple of runs that I think might have been by design, where maybe it's hey, look and see if you have it here, and then boom, take off. And I thought that was a positive for Hudson. But other than that, the dude just doesn't have time. So it's hard for me to be super critical on him when he can't get his feet set and throws. And yes, when he misses some throws, like he missed that throw where Deion Burks was wide open, but he's on the move, really didn't set his feet. He's throwing on the run, and he's feeling pressured, and he just misses him. And it's hard when you're not in a rhythm the entire game to just suddenly be right there and ready to go, and have the time to set your feet and throw, because I don't think he felt like he had the time to set his feet and make an accurate throw, because he makes an accurate throw, that's a 30-40 yard gain. And we saw a good pass, a ball that where he just kind of threw it up and allowed his receiver to go make a play with Mershawn Rice, but he immediately has to leave the game with a lower leg injury. And I man, it's just like, man, you have one good thing and then boom, this happens. It's it's kind of how this season has gone. You feel like you're taking steps in the right direction, and then boom, boom, boom. It's one step forward, and at times it feels more than just one step back. It feels like sometimes two or three steps back. And this season by no means has been a fun one to watch if you're a Purdue fan. These last, you know, 4 games now have been utterly horrible to watch offensively. I mean, when you are used to what you had with the previous regime and offense, and you felt like this was going to be something similar because air raid, you have what you think are guys that are going to come in and be playmakers. You feel like you have a good tandem at running back. You feel, okay at the offensive line. You're bringing in a quarterback that is talented, has a strong arm, and it just hasn't turned out to be that way. Hasn't turned out to be that way whatsoever. It's been the complete opposite. It's like pulling teeth. This offense has just struggled to find any rhythm whatsoever. The running game was when when it really feels like this team wants to run the ball, I think they're solid, but I don't think that's what they want to do. Uh, philosophy wise, because Tyrone Tracy, average over 5 yards per carry. Maccabee, it's a mental thing, guys. I obviously think the world of him. I think he's super talented, Maccabee, but it's a mental thing. I think with him fumbling the ball. That's I mean the first carry that he gets puts it on the turf, and luckily it was overturned and his knee was down. He didn't have any issues the rest of the game, but I mean, and I agree with what Todd Blackledge said. It's a mental thing at this point. When you have that many fumbles this season, you're just like you're not even focused on trying to make a big play or finding the read. You're focused on holding on to the ball, and it's a tough thing to overcome when you've had these issues, and you felt like, hey, we're trending in a better direction since the Syracuse game. He's not as loose with the football, but it's still like what these plays that are just it's right from the start. Then you're just like, oh, now we just lost him for the whole game because now it's in his head even more. Now, can we trust him to go with the rest of the game with not fumbling? Can we? How much can we lean on Tracy? I mean, Dylan Downing's a non-factor at all in this rushing attack. I mean, I don't, I don't know where they go because they can't pass protect. Pass pro blocking has just been not good, not good. So I don't know if these last few games they try to lean on rushing the ball, but again, you're facing three pretty solid defense. Varying on a scale. Minnesota maybe the better of the three defenses that you're facing the rest of the year, but Northwestern's got a good defense. Indiana has proven, to hang with an Ohio State early on in the season, and that's kind of been there throughout. They've been able to hang around in a lot of these games, and I think that Old Oak and Bucket game is going to be one that's going to be a very low scoring, ugly game. I mean, don't expect any team to get into the 30s the next 3 weeks. It's going to be more ugly football, and I hope you're ready for it. I'm I'm trying to mentally prepare for it after having the same game on at the same time that was USC Washington, and the final total was 94 with a 52-42 win, and the Alabama LSU game was also in the 40s and 30s, and I was like, Purdue is a long, long ways away from anything like that, and long ways away from the expectations that were there at the beginning of the year. And I we'll see. There's just a lot of changes that need to be made in the offseason. A overhaul of the offense, whether that is a new offensive coordinator or changing up how you do things to get the ball out of Hudson Card's hands quicker, a more balanced attack where you're trying to rush the ball, have more of an emphasis on running the ball, and wanting that to be more of your identity. Because the defense got you stops tonight, but you can't just keep going 3-and-out and put them back out there on the field after just 3 plays, after being off the field for 5 minutes. And if you're running 3 pass plays, it's no time off the clock. And while Michigan didn't run the ball down your throat all night, they were still able to move the chains through the air. I think they finished with 19 or 20 first downs where Purdue had, single digits. I mean, that's just incredible. A couple of stats I wanted to read out to you guys. That field goal that Purdue had, or any of the points that Purdue would have had tonight, were the first points that um, and Michigan has given up in like 120 straight points that they scored. Because you got to remember they were down, I think, early to Indiana, or at least tied 7-7, I think, in that first quarter, and then they went on to win, by 4 or 5 scores, and then they completely shut out Michigan State 49-0 over 3 weeks ago, and then scored the first 17 points for tonight's game. So Michigan was on a streak of 121 straight points. That's insane. Insane. But I still think there are things that this team showed that are bright spots, some positives, and maybe we'll get to see more of those against a team that is not as talented, is struggling offensively, like Purdue is, for the next 3 weeks. Because it's going to be a couple of defensive struggles these next few weeks. And we'll see. We'll talk about those on Thursday. Thank you so much for tuning in to this recap show. Again, Purdue loses 41-13. I at least had Purdue's point total on the mark. Michigan just didn't do its part by scoring 10 more points in my prediction at a 51-13. But we'll talk to you guys again on Thursday. Thank you so much. Make sure you are subscribed. Make sure you follow on socials. Yeah. Till then, I'll see you guys. I've been your host, Brice Vance. This has been the Behind the Rails of Purdue Football on the Believe Network, presented by Bet Online. See you guys on Thursday.